Hi, I'll construct the net of this capsid shape to show you how to get the best result with sharp edges, pointy vertices, and what are best practices to construct this. Most importantly, the size and paper stock you use. It is easiest to construct on the largest paper size you can print it on. So I suggest at minimum 11 by 17 inch or tabloid size, or I use 13 by 19 inch, and I use plain cardstock or cover paper that is printable by any inkjet printer. I also try and fit my shape as large as possible on the paper. I even have cut it in two sections so I could blow up each section more. Once I have printed out my model, I first indicate where the gluing flaps will be. So each face will have one side with a flap. Then I cut the model out with an X-Acto knife, a hobby knife, and a metal ruler on a cutting mat. So I get really sharp cut edges defined by the ruler. With scissors, I then bevel the flaps and I take care to cut them really acutely towards the point of the face so the flap isn't wider than the shape of the face at that area. Then the most important thing is to score the edges, the lines of the edges, because it will make it a lot easier to create a very sharp, clean fold. Also, when you score all the edges that way, you can pre-fold your model so you already see how it comes together. You can see if you just missed scoring one, then you can still do that. I simply glue it with white glue and I construct it flap by flap. I usually start on the long edges and I use the glue pretty liberally so it's a bit squishy and you can still shift and position your flap so the edges meet really cleanly. And then I let that dry and start gluing on the other side of the model. So I can keep going with my glue while one end is drying. I glue the other end. I start to already put some of the top smaller parts together, but mostly I try to keep the model open until I have glued most of the long edges because they will be the most difficult to glue together. Usually it's easy to get started, and the more sides are glued shut, the more challenging it will become to try and press the flap onto the other face and have the edges nicely meet, because you always have to press it a little bit from the inside. So when you get towards closing the model, I make use of other objects to sort of put pressure from the inside. So I can use a pencil. There's also a trick when you have to close the final part of your prism, which usually is maybe the cap, top cap. I pull the flaps a little bit outward. So when I shut the cap into the model, the flap will sort of shear against the edge of the other face. So when I put glue on it, it sort of automatically makes contact and the flap is sort of not pointing inward, so it's not connecting to the backside of the face it's supposed to glue on. And then you have to hold the model, shut with the glue for just a little while until it sets. Maybe it shifts a bit, so you have to reposition the the areas so the faces really meet nicely at their supposed edge. Once you've completely closed the model, just check. There may be some areas that can need a little bit more glue to close it a bit nicer. So I just, touch it up, press some points together, especially around the tips of the vertices. And then there you have it, your virus model. And there is the other model I glued of the two. You see how it's larger. And it's really fun to see all those models side by side and the way the faces work differently, where some become pointing out and how some models have 5 faces on the top, or they expand to 6, or they shrink to 4. So constructing these models, I think, is very important to get a different kind of spatial understanding of the shape of your virus.